Welcome everybody to another event with Neighbors on Call. So pleased that you're with us here tonight. I'm Susan Blunt, one of the directors, and Becca Zirkin, our other director, is here too. You'll hear from her in a few minutes. We're thrilled to have you here from all over the state and beyond. One of the silver lining of the pandemic, is that we have been fortunate to have many people from out of state join us in our virtual event. So we're glad you're here and welcome to all. If you don't mind, we started this before during the social time, but if you haven't yet, take a moment to put your name in the chat and where you're from and your organization if you'd like, and your favorite TV show or a movie or a book or something, although our chit chat time is over for now, but it'd just be fun to see what folks are up to. If you are new to us, Neighbors on Call is registered with the state as a partisan PAC. We're an all-volunteer organization focused on electing Democrats to the North Carolina state legislature. Now, we're not a fundraising group, but rather a volunteer raising group. We're organized into 5 chapters, including one just for our out-of-state folks. Every Monday, you'll receive a weekly email from your chapter leaders. Now, to give you pause, 1 year from now on a Tuesday night, exactly at this time, the polls will be closing for the 2022 elections. In North Carolina, in addition to the race for the U.S. Senate and 14 seats in Congress, we'll be celebrating or mourning the outcomes of 2 state Supreme Court races and 4 North Carolina Court of Appeals races, and all 170 House and Senate seats in the state legislature. We all want to feel confident that we did everything we could towards this in our own different ways to work toward our shared goal, electing people who will work to dismantle racist policies and structures, support poor people, fight climate change, and invest in our health and our children's education. Now, we can and should be hopeful, but at the same time, we're not naive. We're on the defensive here in North Carolina. The thing we did not want to happen in the 2020 elections did happen. That is, the Republicans retained the majority in both chambers of the North Carolina legislature, and thus full control of the redistricting process. Now we have the maps to prove it. We are so glad that Senator Batch is here to help us understand this tonight, so we'll be talking to her soon about that and what they have in store for us, especially in the state Senate. We're going to have to work smart. Each of us needs to plug in the way that can be most valuable and effective to the overall goals. Now, Neighbors on Call's piece of this puzzle is this. As we have for the last 5 years now, we'll keep on canvassing and phone banking to elect Democrats to the state legislature. We'll focus on the close races where the ground game could make it or break it. Looking back to 2018, we knocked on over 15,000 doors to help break the supermajority in the state house. And then in 2020, that odd year, we phone banked to keep the supermajority at bay and helped Representative Ricky Hurtado flip his seat. So our goal for 2022 is to preserve Governor Cooper's veto power, which means doing all we can to prevent another Republican supermajority in the North Carolina legislature. We cannot allow North Carolina to follow in the footsteps of Texas. So tonight we're honored to welcome Senator Sidney Batch, who represents Southern Wake County, and Dr. Aimy Steele, the Executive Director of the New North Carolina Project. We'll have a little time for Q&A towards the end, but we'll ask you now to hold your questions until later on, and then later in the program, we'll say we're ready now, and you can put any that have not already been covered into the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can get to. I am really pleased and proud to introduce our 2 guests tonight, 2 wonderful women. First of all, and I believe she's here, but yes, are you here? So,
they're both here. Everybody's here.
Good. Senator Sidney Batch represents Southern Wake County. She was elected to the State House in 2018 when she flipped House District 37. Due to redistricting in 2019, she lost that seat in 2020. Then in 2021, Governor Cooper appointed her to the Senate to fill a vacancy from Senate District 17. where she continues to advocate for the needs of North Carolina families. She and her husband own a small law firm in Wake County, and Senator Batch is a family law attorney, child welfare advocate, and a social worker. Dr. Aimy Steele, who's here, there she is the executive director of the new North Carolina. This is the new North Carolina project. She was a candidate for the North Carolina House District 82 in both 2018 and 2020. Now, building on her extensive K through 12 public school operation experience, she began the new North Carolina project with the long-term mission of engaging the nearly 1 million eligible voters of color in North Carolina who did not vote in 2020. Let that register, 1 million. The new North Carolina project, patterned after Stacey Abrams' new Georgia project, aims to increase the electorate and turnout in traditionally Black and brown communities, starting with 100,000 more voters of color in 2022 than voted in the last midterms, and she will continue that effort through the decade. The new North Carolina project is a 501c4 organization with a 501c3 arm, the new North Carolina Project Foundation, and it has already raised $2 million toward this goal. Congratulations. We're very, very pleased and proud to have you both here. Thanks so much. Turning it over to you now, Becca.
Hi, I'm Becca Zirkin. I'm the other director of Neighbors on Call. Senator Batch and Dr. Steele, thank you so much for being here tonight. Senator Batch, we want to start just by asking you to give us the big picture about the maps. We've got 3 new maps, 14 US congressional seats, the state house map, the state Senate map. Can you tell us what your initial reaction is to our brand new maps?
Well, just when you think that, we as Democrats said they're going to gerrymander the state. And so we came up with the worst case scenario. And then they came up with an even worse scenario because we're not that maniacal. It's amazing. We literally drew the worst maps that we possibly could draw as Democrats. And then they one-upped us, right? And they showed us how much they could actually gerrymander the races. So we'll start with the congressional races, right? We gained a congressional race. But out of the races that we have, they have made 2 of them Democratic districts and almost all the rest of them competitive, right? Or solidly Republican. They have split Greensboro into, I believe, 3 congressional districts, right? 3. One, Guilford County has enough members in its county to be 2/3 of a congressional district on its own. And yet they were very strategic in dividing its power, its Democratic power, so that Representative Manning will not be coming back in that seat, and that they now have the opportunity to have 3 Republican seats instead of the 1 solid Democratic seat. They drew Southern Wake County and split Wake County in half so that they took the power of the Democratic vote in half of Wake County and they gave it to 4 or 5 other Republican counties where that is now going to be a solidly Republican congressional seat. So it's abysmal. Like, it's really, really bad, the congressional maps. Part of that also is that they unilaterally across the board ended up with what they did. They said that they didn't take partisan data into account. They didn't take race into account. They didn't take any of that to account. I don't know what they took into account. We obviously know that they took all of those things into account, but they were very smart because they learned in the last decade of all of the litigation, they couldn't put themselves on the line to say what they actually did. So they said nothing. And when we voted on the maps last week, only 1 Republican the entire time spoke about the bills. Everyone else was silent. So unlike in 2010, when everybody wanted to stand up and say crazy things, like the only reason why we have 3, Democratic congressional seats is because we couldn't figure out a way for them to be 2. They didn't do that this time. They actually stayed in line, learned their lessons, and kept their mouths shut. So what that means for the House is that out of the 120 seats, based on the maps, taking nothing into consideration, there are 42 safe Democratic seats. There are 55 solidly safe Republican seats. There are 7 competitive seats that slightly lean Democratic and 10 that lean Republican. So at the end of this, we need in the House 49 votes, 49 Democrats to sustain the veto, the governor's veto. That leaves 5 seats that are 50-50 that are still out of that 120. And those are going to be really, really tough seats to hold on to or to win in. The other really important factor about the House is that, as some of you know, especially if you follow politics, there are a handful of Democratic members that vote to override the governor's veto on a consistent and regular basis. So they're Democrats in name only, and they're constantly overriding the governor's veto. So even though we only need 49 votes for the override, that means you need 49 solid Dems. So what you really need to talk about is that you need, rather than 49 Democrats, you need 56, because 6 of those are typical individuals that will vote for Republicans. So the House, while it does say on its face that it will be able to keep the supermajority at bay, that's with the presumption that those individuals that don't vote with Republicans either don't come back, get primaried and lose, or we win additional seats to make up for the fact that they continually vote with the Republicans, of which they have no accountability for. And that's what is an issue. In the Senate starts off worse. In the Senate, they have 26 solidly Republican seats. They have 17 safe Dem seats. That means that we're already starting off in a super minority in the Senate. We have 3 lean seats that go to them and 2 for us. In order to have the veto-proof majority in the Senate, it has to be 21 seats. So we have already lost 3 Democratic seats in the redraw. Mine is a 50-50 now, 50.4 Biden district. So that doesn't give any of us any encouragement after what we saw in Virginia. And they need to keep my seat in the Senate. And then they need to win or flip 2 other seats that Republicans are currently in, of which they look good for us, right? One's in Wilmington, one's in the Wake Granville seat. That is just as it's 50-50 district as well. But what that means is that we have to just keep my seat, pick up 2 more to just have the 21 threshold. So they were extremely maniacal with what they did with these maps. And it's going to be really challenging. And what I also want to point out, and if you guys hadn't seen it, it's a really good article about the fact that minorities were the ones that disproportionately were affected. So there are 12 state legislators who will be in competitive seats or who were drawn into a Republican district. That doesn't include the congressional seats, right? Like Representative G.K. Butterfield, his now is a much more competitive district that could very well easily go to a Republican, right? Whereas he had a very solidly Democratic district. And what that did was they watered down the races. I mean, they watered down the votes to go ahead and, of course, make sure that there were no majority minority districts to, of course, make sure that they could get as many seats as possible. So, Becca, I wish I had great news, but Republicans did what Republicans do. And they went ahead and they play for keeps, and they are committed. And every day they wake up, every single day they wake up and try and figure out how they're going to retain and hold on to their power. We don't do that. That's what we as Democrats need to figure out, but that is not what we do. And unfortunately, we need to put ourselves in a very battlefield mindset about what we're going to do in order to make sure that we don't become Texanistan. The Republicans in the General Assembly have already said that they plan to go ahead and push all of their pro-life legislation and anti-abortion bills in 2022. They're not doing it now because we can sustain the veto, but they plan to do it when they have supermajorities, and there's nothing that we can do about it. They just said they're not going to do it now because it's not a fight that they want to draw attention to. So that is the overarching where we're at net zero with regards to moving forward with the maps. There's litigation that's going on right now, but that is sadly the reality of where we're going into in 2022, and why it's really important for us to start now, since we're a year out, and organize as much as possible.
Well, I did want to ask you also about the litigation. There's 2 legal challenges. So one's challenging the congressional maps, and one is challenging both the state house and state Senate maps. Can you help us understand that? Which courts are each of those moving through, and how fast might that happen? And what might a possible remedy be? And is there?
So
is it likely?
so the congressional maps are going to be based much more so not on, I mean, yes, partisan and gerrymandering, but it's really about not taking race into consideration, right? There are districts, and even with Stevenson, which is the landmark case for all decisions that need to be made in North Carolina with regards to redistricting, you're supposed to take into account race. They said that they didn't take into account. The fact that they didn't take it into account violates one of the core principles of redistricting, and therefore that's one of the challenges that they've made with regards to the congressional maps. And obviously all of the other inequities with regards to splitting power of, taking Guilford County and splitting into 3 congressional districts. They have Allison Riggs and I think NDRC working with Allison Riggs ended up filing that lawsuit as soon as the congressional maps were filed. And they will be in a situation where they've asked for a stay, and they've asked for the delay of filing and then the delay of primaries so that we could go back to the drawing board to get better maps, which, let's be clear, guys, like the last decade, we fought and finally got redraws in 2018. So we're stuck with the 2022 maps. And frankly, what Susan was saying about the Court of Appeals, we also have 2 Supreme Court races that are going to happen in 2022, right? And the partisan nature of the gerrymander, which is what we're talking about in the state legislative districts, and they may make a racial gerrymander, as you can see, 12 of us Black legislators. The Senate, for instance, has 12 Black legislators. 4 of us are either in a competitive and or completely eliminated because we're in a Republican district. So and it's the Black legislators that ended up getting put in these districts. So they may make a racial challenge. There will be litigation that moves forward with regards to the state maps, but that's going to be based on partisan gerrymander probably, which means that it goes through our state courts. And unfortunately, our Chief Justice is not Justice Beasley. And our Chief Justice will be able to appoint the 3-court panel that hears the arguments, of which he can appoint 3 Republicans or he can appoint 2 Republicans. Inside baseball for you all, last week in the Senate, Senator Berger is always in the chamber and he votes at every single session. He was surprisingly absent last week because he doesn't want to have his son have to recuse himself, who serves on the Supreme Court, with regards to this partisan gerrymander and litigation. So he didn't vote on the maps and he made himself scarce because he wants to make sure that his son doesn't have to actually recuse himself. So the partisan litigation and the partisan gerrymandering case will go through our state courts. And we are 1 seat away from a majority of Republicans on the court. And if that happens, we can kiss, in my opinion, any legal challenge that is sound away. And so we really have to make sure that we're fighting for making the 2 Supreme Court seats that'll actually be up in 2022. And I will also just finish this out. Again, I'm gloom and doom. I was talking to a Wake County men's group last week, Democratic men's group. And after I spoke, someone's like, do you have any hope? It's like, just a realist. And the reality is that when you're looking at the courts, the Republican caucus chair of the House, who runs their caucus, said, you guys can celebrate with these new maps now when we won, the very short victory that we all had in the courts a little while ago. He said, it's not going to matter. We plan to take supermajorities in both chambers and the Supreme Court. So none of this will matter. Enjoy your celebration now. That is the type of energy and effort that they put in and day out to hold on to power at all costs, whether it's cheating, borrowing, stealing, pleading, fear mongering. All of that will be in full display in 2022.
So they have our work cut out for us, is what I hear you saying. And to put a fine point on it, we will be using these maps next year. We should not delude ourselves into thinking that, well, maybe it's not real. This is the reality that we need to plan around. You have been planning around this for a while. Your campaign has already been very organized and active. And so I'd like to ask you, what exactly will you be doing, Senator Batch, on November 20th at 10 a.m.?
I will be hanging out with a bunch of you wonderful individuals, including Isabel, who always shows up because she's a wonderful human being, and many of you others, to go ahead and actually do a canvas. So what we started doing, and I think one of the things that we don't do as Democrats well enough, is that we don't keep constant attention on our constituents, right? We only go to them and knock on their doors when we're begging them to come out and actually vote for us, but we're not communicating with them in off years. And so what I did this year was create a placard that says, hey, I'm your new state senator, and these are constituent services that we can offer, right? Going to their door, asking them what they actually care about, because we shouldn't be telling voters what they should care about. We should be listening to them and then planning on making sure that we're speaking to them effectively. But the other thing that I'm doing is making sure that they understand that we as an office, regardless of, political affiliation, are there to help them with a variety of services. So we are canvassing, and we plan to canvass multiple times, because what we saw in 2020 when Dr. Steele and I were in the good fight, and we both lost, along with 17 other Black women across the state. All 17 Black women in competitive races lost last year, y'all. That's the reality of what we're looking at. And when we were out there and we were doing the work, we were on phones, but we know that our secret sauce as Democrats is canvassing, is meeting people at the door, is talking to them, and they're always happy and surprised, typically, to say, oh, you actually care enough to be out here. They love it even more when it's in an off year, when you're not asking them to do anything. All you're asking is, what is your biggest issue and how can I help? And so that's what we are doing between now and, hopefully I won't have a primary. Between now and March, we will just be communicating with voters on a consistent basis multiple times a month, going out and handing out information, which will allow us to get a better sense of what people actually care about, because we know that polls are not always accurate, but your constituents will at least tell you what they care about if you listen long enough at the doors. So we're going to be doing that day in and day out. And if anyone wants to join us for that kickoff, we would love to have you.
Thank you. I would like to make a plug for that too, because Neighbors on Call volunteers will be there, and our volunteers have been doing some of these canvases with you, and they are just the easiest canvases to do, because you're not, like you said, you're not asking for anything. You're just saying, look, Senator Batch can help you with whatever. Here's her number, just FYI. And it's a very pleasant interaction. And I say this as someone who does, some people love to canvass. I do it because I know it works, and because then I get myself a little treat afterwards, and I know it's important. So that's why I will be there. And once I get into it, it's all good. But whatever anyone's motivation is, you don't have to love it, but you can know that it works. And we invite you to please join Senator Batch. Neighbors on Call will be there on November 20th at 10 a.m. if you are within a driving distance of Holly Springs. And you do get a lot of support. The campaign supports you. Senator Batch's campaign manager, who's also named Sidney, she trains you, gives you a script, and gives you a targeted list of doors. And who, by the way, what kinds of voters would be on that list?
Yeah, and so what we're doing, so we believe that this race and all of the races that are really competitive, we have not been doing what we need to do, which is communicating with people early and figuring out who actually is still in that area which we can move. I'm not wasting my time with a Republican who is never going to change their mind about who I am, right? I already have 3% of white Democratic men who won't vote for me, right? That's just the numbers. They won't vote for Black women. So we already have a handicap with regards to what we're doing. So I'm not spending my time trying to convince people who are not on my team. We're looking at the unaffiliated and leaning Democratic voters. We're looking at the new registered voters, of which in my district, just since from January until November 1st, we had 5,600 people move into my district. 1,100 of them we know no data about. We have no idea because they moved from a different state, and we have no idea. We want to go to those doors. And what we want to do is we want to say, hey, and before the Republicans get there, hey, Senator Batch can go ahead and help you. What are any of your concerns and what do you want to share? If we figure out based on what they say, if they're strong Republicans, we at least know that's one vote that we don't have to communicate with, don't have to spend my money on, don't have to go ahead and harass anymore. But if there's somebody that is a swing voter or leans Dem, we can put that into our account, because this race and all of the races, which will be nail biters, will be won by literally probably 10s or 20s or 30s. Rachel Hunt won her race in the House in 2018 by 41 votes. So when we're talking about, like, we need to be micro targeting all of these different groups. So in the canvases, we are going to have lean Democratic and unaffiliated voters where we're going to talk to them. And they're often voters who don't vote in general elections. We're looking for those off year, you don't really care, because we want to engage with them because we know that they need additional touches in order to actually come out next year. So that's what we are going to be focusing on, because the more individuals that we can figure out where they are in our camps, the better we'll know about how many other people we have to actually turn out in order to make up the difference for those 3% Democratic men or the equal amount of Republicans that just registered as Democrats in my new district. There are 1,100 people that are completely unaffiliated and we don't know anything about, right? So those are some of the things that we would do. And usually the doors are very friendly. And again, when you're not asking them for anything or a vote, it ends up going well. And from my experience, even as you guys can tell, I'm a talker, I enjoy it, but people go in pairs. So if you want to be the data person, then the other person can talk and go to the door while you stand there for, partner safety. And until you get your sea legs under you, you can just go with somebody like Isabel, who's gone to like 500 of my campuses and might as well just end up move into my house. Should just give her checks for all of the work that she puts in. But again, like that's the really great part about canvassing, is that you can go in pairs and you can really try and figure out this is what you like. And if you go in pairs, you can just put the other person that's more sage in front and you just sit back and you watch how it happens.
And Neighbors on Call will actually make that very official for you, because when you sign up, you can actually click to say you would like to be a silent canvasser, and we will pair you ahead of time with someone who will do all the talking, and you're there to help out with the data, because everybody needs a partner. So we need you, but you will learn from your chatty Canvas mentor. So anyone is welcome to take advantage of that offer. And
Becca,
Senator
if I can
Batch,
say one
yes,
other thing
please.
about that.
Yes,
So
yes.
Also what you guys need to realize, especially in Southern Wake County, Republicans, because I've lost my race, are like, they feel really good in the House. Like, oh yeah, we're emboldened. We're doing some things. So they are very energized, and they realize when we weren't canvassing last year that was the special sauce, and that's what they're doing now. So they are always talking about canvassing. So we're going to have to meet them. We're going to have to do even more canvassing because they never did that before. They never met their voters at the doors. They're doing that now. So we have to take that and completely ramp it up and continue to engage with these voters, because the Republicans have finally learned what we've known for years, which is the real magic happens at the door.
If you are joining us from the northern Chatham area or Chapel Hill or the Chapel Hill part of Durham, we also have 2 carpools meeting up so you can go down with others. We ask that you be vaccinated, but if you use that, and those are on our website. Oh, and there they are on the slide. So there are many ways that you're getting support, and you will definitely feel appreciated when you show up, because Senator Batch and her campaign manager, Sidney Dugan, will make you feel very appreciated. So please join us, please sign up. And if you're not near Wake County, which many of you are not, we ask that you phone bank with us for Representative Ricky Hurtado. You can do that from anywhere, and we're doing that next Tuesday evening, and we have support for that too. If you don't feel, if you feel unsure about the phone banking or how it works to do a virtual phone bank, sign up for a buddy when you sign up, and we will pair you up in advance, and that person will be in touch with you all night, and they'll help you all along the way. And that is another very important seat for us to protect. Is there anything else you want to say about the canvas, Senator Batch?
Nope. What I will say though is I had the opportunity to go into the House in an open 7-point Democratic seat and return and not have to fight in the Senate. I chose to stay in the Senate because the path to the supermajority goes through my seat, and I did not want to be. I don't run away from fights. I never have, and I don't want to be in a position in which we give them a layup by allowing for them to just go ahead and have an open seat where it's easier for them to win. And so, putting my political career on the line and being willing to take one for the team is just who I am. My life was very fulfilling before politics. It will be just as fulfilling afterward. And I think things happen for a reason. And so I'm in a position where I've chosen to do the hard thing, but the hard thing is what we need to do. And I don't know if anyone, and I know, I apologize, but I just want to, I don't know anyone knows the poem by Langston Hughes called Mother to Son. But I will just read it very briefly, if you don't mind, Becca, because I think this is really powerful. And Dr. Steele will knows this poem, but it will speak to what we are doing and what she will be doing, and what I'm doing and what we all are going to do in this democracy that we, of course, hold near and dear. And I say that my life is my political life, not my real life, has been no crystal stair. And so the poem is, it goes like this. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor bare. But all the time, I's been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you sit down on the steps, because you finds it's kind of harder. Don't you fall now, for eyes are still going, honey. Eyes are still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair. And what I think is really important for all of us to understand is that democracy is fought, and it's fought every single day. And if we sit down and we take the easy path, no one, not a single person who we love and hold dear to our hearts and in our lives, will be in a position where they will be able to take care of their families for generations to come, have the education and the healthcare that they deserve. And so for me, I always say, like, my political life ain't been no crystal stair, right? Dr. Steele's life ain't been no crystal stair, but we keep climbing and we keep rising, because if we sit down, we lose absolutely everything. So the sacrifices that I'm making, the sacrifices that you all make with your time and your treasures is so important, because all of us will likely be okay if the supermajority comes back. But the individuals who don't have a voice, don't have power, and can't take the time to advocate because they don't even know where the resources are and are working 2 and 3 jobs, can't afford a supermajority in North Carolina. So I'll stop talking now. I'm sorry, Becca.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're going to need that reminder a lot over the next year, because we have a lot to do. Dr. Steele, turning it over to you. We are all extremely grateful. I know I'm speaking for everyone who's here, for what you're doing for starting the new North Carolina project. And tell us what you're working on. Tell us where you are now and what it's going to look like when all the pieces are in place.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you, Senator Batch. You are my girl, and I'm so honored to know you. I'm so just overwhelmed, honestly, overwhelmed with excitement about the hope of what is to come. Senator Batch really teed it up nicely with, here are the facts. Here is what we're dealing with. This is what we see on a daily basis. And now I'm here to tell you that there is hope, and this is what we need to do. So with your permission, Becca, I'm going to share my presentation. All right. So y'all, for those of you who don't know me or who've not had the opportunity to hear me speak, I will say I am a teacher at heart. I teach all the time, and good teachers always have presentations. We're always prepared. But I want to tell you a story about engaging in North Carolina. As Senator Batch said, we all have a responsibility to do something. You are no longer afforded the opportunity to just sit back and watch this debacle take place and unfold right before our eyes. You are not able to just vote and say, you know what, I've done my due, I'm good. That's not enough, friends. There are 10, 11, roughly million people in North Carolina. We have so much work to do. But the good news is that we have a plan. We have a strategy. Neighbors on Call has a plan. They have a strategy. Join up with one of these groups, with one of these canvases, one of these phone call sessions, phone banking sessions, text banking sessions, whatever it is that you like to do it. But it should be more than just voting. Okay, voting is important, obviously, but do more, because you are the 20%. You're it. This is the 20%. So I bring to you the new North Carolina project. engage. We've laid the groundwork. We've talked about what's out there, and now it's time to engage. So what does engage mean? It means to occupy, attract, or involve yourself, okay, or someone's interest or attention. It is absolutely time for you to engage in taking back our democracy, fixing these maps, fixing all of the things. People are counting on us. And the most vulnerable people are absolutely counting on us. And those are our tiny constituents who are children under the ages of 17, 16 years old. They're counting on us to give them a better North Carolina. So you can't just sit this one out. And I really mean that, like with all of my heart. After 2020, I was so done with politics. I was finished. I lost 2 elections. And for those who don't know, I have 5 whole kids, like 5 little humans that I'm responsible for, my husband and I. And they've been missing their mommy for 3 straight years, trying to help democracy, trying to secure a seat and a seat at the table, honestly, where Black men and women are typically not welcomed, where people of color are already in such few numbers. Their mom was trying to secure a seat at the table to be a voice for those who are voiceless in the community or who have a voice, but people don't listen. That's all I was trying to do. But when that didn't work out, I still chose to engage. And this is how I'm engaging. So the mission and the vision of the new North Carolina project is to really make politics represent the needs of North Carolinians by investing in communities of color, and as Representative Batch said, year-round, and expanding the engaged electorate, as well as creating voters for life. Now, we've gotten a lot of pushback on this hashtag, voters for life. Voters for life means voters forever, always, okay? Our vision is to create a more equitable future for North Carolina. Essentially, we want to use all of the tools in our toolbox to really excite people about being engaged in voting, political action, political advocacy all year long. You absolutely cannot just parachute into a community, especially a community of color, and say, do this, do that, do this, do that, and then we're going to leave. And by the way, we're not going to be held accountable for the things we told you we were going to do. People of color and people, period, see through that garbage, right? They don't believe it. And over time, you lose trust. Our job with the New North Carolina Project is to go back into communities and help rebuild that trust. So who are we? Well, that's me on the left. I'm the executive director and the founder of the New North Carolina Project. I am also the founder of the New North Carolina Project Foundation. On the far right is our newly named executive director of our C3, so our foundation. And then right in the middle is our deputy executive director. Together, we make up the executive leadership team of both organizations. So why are we doing this? Well, for one, we're standing up a 360-day field program to engage communities of color, to continue building that year-round community organizing that I just talked about, to also build a voter base for years to come. This is not a single year project, friends. This is an ongoing entity that will require ongoing and consistent action and engagement. We also want to create a more just body of leadership in North Carolina. You heard Senator Batch talk about the just what's being done in both chambers of the House. This real desire to just keep power within one group of people, and really one gender, if you really want to call it out, one group of people with one vision, and that is to maintain power and control. And that's just not representative of all people who live here. It's also not representative of the fact that we're basically a 50-50 state, but all of our political leadership does not look that way. In the New North Carolina Project, we're doing this to demonstrably build a sense of trust, especially in communities of color across our state, which has really dissipated over the last decade and more. And lastly, we want to help engage, and Becca talked about this earlier, more than 1 million eligible, registered and or registered voters of color who did not vote in 2020. In 2020, I literally lost my race by just under 3,000 votes. And there were over 6,000 progressive leaning voters who just did not vote. And I really blame myself for not bucking the system sooner and standing up the field operation that we stood up in 2018, which helped us to close the gap of what we were expected to lose by. So this is not like we are at a crossroads. If we don't do something now, we really will be very, very sorry after 1 year from today, as Susan mentioned, after that year passes. So what do we plan to do with the New North Carolina Project? Well, I'm glad you asked. We are doing currently door-to-door canvassing. That's just door-to-door knocking doors. When Sidney said, Senator Batch, when Senator Batch said knocking doors is the magic, that's the secret sauce, that's where magic happens, she's absolutely right. It happens on the door. It happens with human face-to-face interaction. That's the highest yield of being able to secure someone's vote or being able to secure their trust. That's the highest yield. You get the highest yielded activity from that action alone. We'll also be doing strategic phone banking. So we're cold calling into communities of color as well as communities, we're cold calling rather, and warm calling. Warm calling are people we know about. We already know their status. We know they're friendly. We know they're going to vote and they're consistent. We're also cold calling people who just are not consistent. We have many, many ways to acquire data. If you knew how many ways we had to acquire data, you probably would be scared. But we have so many ways, and we're super excited about using some of those creative strategies to really engage people of color across North Carolina. We'll be text banking. You can text bank from your computer. So if that's your thing, that's your jam, and you don't really want to talk to anybody, you can talk to them on the typewriter or on the computer. So that's something we'll be doing. We'll also be doing 3 other things that I think are very important to build a sustainable 360-day field program. That includes our Digital Ambassadors Program, which is a relational organizing program. This allows us to create videos that teach the communities of color about things that they deem important, things that they deem special, and things that they want to hear about around 3 issues: health, wealth, and power. Every module we create within our relational organizing tool allows us to incentivize those who watch the videos to learn about health, wealth, and power within their local communities, as well as do a small quiz or take just to answer a couple questions about the video. And the video is like 3 minutes, but we are able to incentivize people who take this specific action. And it's amazing how we're able to invest back in communities of color. We're already doing this, and it's been so helpful. It was also done in Georgia right before the November election and all through the runoff with really great results. So this is something that we're using as a structure of keeping in contact with people all year round. We're also doing in-person and virtual events. My counterpart, the executive director of the C3, is on a virtual powwow right now with the Meherrin Nation and other tribal nations across the United States, but represented by specific tribes here in North Carolina. We are connecting with Asian communities, Latinx communities, Black communities, and Native communities all across the state. It is so important that we secure a very solid block of communities of color in voting in 2022, or again, we're back to doom and gloom. So this is the focus of our organization. We're also doing in-person events. We had a wonderful powwow about 2 weeks ago. We have festivals coming up, et cetera. So just stay tuned. Lastly, we are working with other groups who are already doing amazing work, like Neighbors on Call, like other groups that are already doing great work, but are strategically trying to make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes in certain areas across the state in a legally compliant way. I have to always say that. My attorneys get on me all the time. So our issues that we talk about when we're on the doors, similar to what Senator Batch said, we're asking people what's important to you. You don't go to a community and say, yo, I know what you need. This is what you need. I got it. I have the solutions for all of your needs. No. That's not how it works. You go and you listen and you're open and then you respond. That's it. You go, listen, be open, respond. And those issues are around COVID, around community relations, mental health, economic recovery, homelessness, the fact that our housing is out of control, especially here in our state, and education. My number 1 top issue forever and a day is public education. So those are the things we'll do when we're on the doors in terms of talking about deep canvassing. So many people ask, where are you working? Like, how are you doing all of this? Well, I do love the Department of Public Instruction most days. And I will tell you that DPI has come up with a system of 8 regions that basically works. It works all the time. And it's a system that doesn't change. These lines don't change like congressional districts. Don't these look like amazing? They actually make sense, right? Well, I wish our congressional lines looked similar to this, but they don't. So these lines are the lines we choose to use. So we divided up the state in 8 regions. And because of the performance of 2020, this is how we chose to divide and design kind of how we would operate. So these blue spaces represent precincts where Black, Latinx, AAPI, Asian American, Pacific Islander voters, and Indigenous people in 2020 represented 20% or more of the total eligible voting age population. So you can see these are high opportunities where we're going to find voters or people of color, okay? This is more specific down to like the actual heat map count of people. So these people or these blue spaces represent the percentage of the total eligible voting population from 0 to 30. So the darker the blue, the higher the percentage of population that's eligible to vote. Our focus areas in terms of those 6 strategies that I talked about will center on these darker areas. Okay, so you've got Swain County over here. There are 2 precincts over here of Cherokee or a particular tribe, but I think there's Cherokee and another tribe over there. Urban centers, so Mecklenburg, Cabarrus, here, Forsyth, Guilford, you've got the Wake, Cumberland, Durham, of course, Durham County, New Hanover down here, and then several areas in what we call the Black Belt on the I-95 corridor. So what are our goals? Well, while we're not a campaign, because I'm a former candidate, everything I do is baked in campaign philosophy. So we do have aggressive goals. We plan to knock 250,000 doors, make 1 million calls, send 1 million texts, and turn out 100,000 more voters of color over the 2018 cycle, which is the last midterm cycle we had, to 2022, and then register more than 100 or about 100,000 voters. So we have aggressive goals. I believe in aiming high. Stacey Abrams says too big is not a reason to not try. So we're gonna try and we're gonna go hard after it. So what is next for us? Well, it's game on. We are aggressively doing our field plan, working our field plan now. We're hiring. We are getting ready to hire 8 field organizers right now, or organizers, we call them organizers. We've already extended offers. We are partnering with different groups, as I mentioned, so C3s and C4s based on our respective organizations. We are engaging in the community. We are literally talking to people every single day, including Saturdays and Sundays, to strategize, to work through, what are we doing? How are we doing it? What's the most effective way to get this done? And we're just getting to work. So I encourage you to join us. So how can you get involved or stay involved? Well, 1, you can visit our website. My team's going to drop that information in the chat. You can follow us on all social media, New NC Project, keep up with our canvases, look at our mobilize links. We're going to be dropping a lot of events coming up soon. Make a donation. So we have a C3 and a C4. Here today, I'm representing the C4. I'm a board member and the founder of the C3, so you can feel free to donate there. We also have a way for you to volunteer and get involved. So please, if you are concerned at all about what Senator Batch said earlier, then you need to pick one of these ways to get involved. You need to be on the Neighbors on Call website, volunteering, donating, doing something, but do not leave this PowerPoint presentation, Zoom, with no further action, but I'm gonna vote in November or March and November. You must do more. You can also spread the word to friendlies. Please don't spread the word to people who cause challenges and issues. I have enough trolls already. I know them by name. You can also offer tips, strategies, suggestions. Like, we're open, we're super open, especially if you have a data mind and you really like numbers. That's my lane. So if you really want to talk and really sparse out where we should go, how we should go there, look at our census tracts and where we're going, door by door, please, get involved, offer those tips and strategies. If you want to partner with us or tell us about other groups that are out there working, please do that. Like, we're so open. Just go to our website and you can reach out. Now, here's my favorite question. What do I do? I'm Black. What do I do? I'm white. What do I do? I'm Latinx. What should I do? Well, I'm Indigenous. What do I do? I'm Asian American Pacific Islander. What do I do? Well, we all gonna do the same things, friends, because we're all in this together. So we're all gonna knock doors in communities where you feel you resonate. If you are white, please know that sometimes Native and Latinx and Asian communities receive you more and better than they receive Black people. If you're Black, please know Black communities sometimes receive you better. If you are Latinx, perhaps Latinx or white communities would receive you more. So we all have things to offer. So please don't put on a hat and say, because I'm this, I can't do this. That's not true. You can find something you can do, especially from this list. You can make calls with voice over IP, especially if you're concerned about your phone number being out there, floating around to people you call. You can send text messages from our secure service. You can deliver, package, or mail merchandise. We sell merchandise. You can mail it. You can help us package it up if that's your thing. You can also raise funds. You can friend raise or fundraise or help us on our development committee as we are continuing to do different things. You can help us plan events. We have been so fortunate through one of our partnerships to receive 4,000 pairs of chino pants. We're going to be doing a huge statewide outreach to a Native community in January. We need partners to help us get in touch with manufacturers in North Carolina who can help us complete the outfit. We need shoes, socks, ties, and shirts for the men. We're also collecting backpacks and school supplies for the children. And then we're doing a coat drive and a food drive. I know it's massive, right? But we're doing it because this is how you engage communities. You help meet constituents' needs, and then they can listen to you. We used to say this all the time in the school when I served as a Spanish teacher or a principal. If your kid is hungry in that, desk, he or she does not care what you're teaching them about reading, writing, math, and science. They need to eat first, then we teach them. You don't just go to people and say, I need, gimme, 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 gimme. You say, how can I support? How can I serve? And oh yeah, by the way, are you registered to vote? Would you like to know who I would vote for? How else can I help you get politically involved and stay politically involved? That's how you build trust. It's just like building a relationship with someone you want to be in a relationship with, okay? Little increments of trust over time. So help us at some of these events. You can staff events. If you say, you know what, like Becca described, the silent canvasser, you're like, I just want to come, I want to set up the table and I want to clean up. I want to pack up all the stuff and make it real pretty. Fine, do that. Anybody can do that, any race, any age, I promise. It's real easy. You can also just suggest how you can support, but whatever you do, you must do something. You cannot just vote and say, I've done my job, I'm good. You must do more than that, especially in 2022. So Becca, that was a super long answer to your very short question, but I'm here for any questions you might have.
Well, I knew a short question was all you needed because I knew you'd let us know what we needed to know. So thank you for that. I'd actually like to open it up to audience questions. We have a few more minutes. So if you've been holding on to a question, now's a good time to put it in the chat. And Patience Vanderbush, who is one of the Neighbors on Call chapter leaders, she is going to lead the Q&A for us. Patience, let us know when you're ready. Yep, you're good.
Here. Yeah, first question is for Senator Batch. Susan is concerned about how much Republicans target voters with a flood of misinformation and wants to know how we fight misinformation. And those of us who worked for you in 2020 remember a particularly outrageous flyer that was distributed. And so the question is, what will you do to counter that?
So the first thing that I would say is, if you're going to be in this, you've got to have candidates and people that have very thick skin, right? I mean, I've been in this Black body for my entire life and have dealt with a lot more adversity than what Republicans throw at me on any given day of the week. And so fortunately for me, I just go ahead and you just brush it off. What you were saying, Patience, and she's right, is that for those of you who don't know, I had terrible mailers about me, but one which was the worst was when they photoshopped my head on a communist's little outfit and had me saluting the Chinese and Russian flags. And it was really bad symbolism because they couldn't it was just ignorant because they couldn't even pick the right symbols. Nonetheless, it was extremely offensive. They race baited me throughout. I just don't respond. I don't care for the opinions of people I don't care for. And I do not engage with individuals who do not deserve my respect or my response, especially in situations in which, frankly, they would not vote for me and I would not take their opinions. And so when we're out there and you're dealing with misinformation, there's a certain sector of our society, unfortunately, that's not going to believe anything that you say. You literally can put all of the facts in front of them, but they think that Dr. Fauci is a liar, right? Like that he is, that he's some plant that the government has put in place. Those individuals I'm not spending my time on. I think, frankly, we have spent, as the Democratic Party, an inordinate amount of time trying to convince a certain selection of voters, which is the suburban white woman, that Democrats care about them. I don't say that we can't walk away from them, but we also have to realize that one of the most astute comments that a Republican, that one of the women said to me, suburban white woman at a polling place, was, "Would you like some information, ma'am?" And she goes, "No, I'm voting the way my husband wants me to vote." Right? There are people out there that are not going to change their mind. What we need to do is we need to run the campaigns and message the way we want. And it doesn't mean that we ignore it. I think we fight back. And I think that we respond. What happened with Dr. Steele and what happened with me in the race, especially every Black woman that was running, it was all a defund message. And we wanted to let the world burn to its feet. We were told by consultants who think they know more than us who live in those districts that we should ignore it. We should not have ignored those responses, and we should have hit back hard, and we should have responded. So I'm not going to deal in this next election, especially when it might be my last, and that's okay, with telling people who come from a different place in this country how they should tell me what to do in my district of which I live every single day. And so when I feel like I need to respond to something that someone is saying that's inaccurate, I will absolutely respond. And if that means I got to raise $40,000 more to do another mail piece to say, hey, I actually am not somebody who believes in defunding the police, and I have been endorsed by the PBA, which I will respond. But I also think we need to be very careful not to spend so much of our time trying to convince people who are never going to be convinced. We need to really work with those voters who are able to still look at reason and maybe come back to our side. Meet people where they are, but once you find out where they are, you leave them alone. They're not on our team. Stop wasting our time, because they're, to Dr. Steele's point, other voters that did not register, that are registered and just sat at home. We should have been churning out 3,000 more individuals to come out and vote who are on our team than spending a whole lot of time trying to convince others who won't ever be on our team.
Thank you. Dr. Steele, Sanjay would like to know which organizations the New North Carolina Project is partnering with for AAPI outreach.
Okay, so we've had some conversation with NC Asians together. Additionally, we have another group that they're a combination of groups that specifically focus on Southeast Asia and then some other parts of Asia. They have been very instrumental in helping us get connected with smaller grassroots organizations that have a specific targeted Asian American outreach, and especially like the Hmong community that's living in Eastern North Carolina and several others in pockets across North Carolina. While they don't have an official name, they are connecting us with some of these leaders in the groups and people who have the power, we've power mapped the whole state. And when you power map, you find out who really are the leaders in these communities, and it really helps to establish like a relationship with them. So that's what we're doing. But NC Asians Together is the named one that we've partnered, or not partnered officially with, but that we've talked to and discussed our strategy with.
Okay. Senator Batch, Andrea is concerned about how we're ensuring that we're getting all those new folks in your district registered to vote. Is there any special effort to help reach out to people who aren't yet registered to vote in your district?
Yeah, so the 5,600 that I was talking about are actually people who did register, which means we know that the growth is outpacing, frankly. I think the reason why it's still a district that you can be a Democrat and win in is that the numbers of the newly registered are outpacing the old registrants, frankly, here in this area. And so it's ballooning up faster and trending a lot faster. What we plan to do is, so we have the newly registered, but a lot of them we don't know who they are. And 50% of them are 35 and under. So a lot of them might be just 18-year-olds who just graduated. So we want to go ahead and engage with them. We want to be careful that we don't out them to their parents. And you have to be a really good canvasser in that regard, because sometimes you can out a child to their parents in a way that doesn't make it pleasant for the child. So I oftentimes, when I'm canvassing and I find out that there's a registrant at the house, whether it be, that the wife is Democrat, husband's Republican, vice versa, I'm very careful about sharing what information and why I am there. I'm just like, hey, I'm just here because I'm your state representative, or we're canvassing because I'm here canvassing for Senator Batch, because you don't want to put that child in an awkward situation, and it happens way more often than you would think, actually. So I would say that's how we're dealing with the new registrants and how we know they're there. The ones who are not registered, Andrea, we are actually looking and working with another group that has data that they're collecting about individuals and how you locate them, right? Because if they don't register, we don't know that they're there. And we got to figure out where we need to be. So I think part of what we need to do is, like Dr. Steele, you go to the places where you think you can get people to register. You go to churches and you say, everybody in here register? Is your cousin, is your mom, is your friend, right? We go to places. I stand by this. Go to a state employees credit union on a Friday. Want to know what North Carolinians think? Go on a Friday where all of them are checking out, happy for once, getting their paychecks. And that is where you will see people like myself who have 3 degrees, and linemen and janitorial staff, all of them bank at the state employees credit union. The best area to find out where people are and whether or not they're registered, that place. May not be able to stand on their steps. That doesn't mean that you can't figure out creative ways where we start looking for people and having a booth outside of a Walmart, right? All of the different places where we know that you're going to have a higher percentage of individuals who may not vote is where we need to actually put our efforts in. And the candidate has to be careful because we can't really touch the ballots. So partnering with Dr. Steele and other organizations who want to talk about registering voters is really important, but we've got to go to the places where those potential voters are supposed to be and where we know they're more likely to show up.
Okay. I think this is going to be our last question. Dr. Steele, how important is it to organize precincts in the areas of color that you've identified with low voter turnout? How can we identify and help with that?
Okay, so I actually just answered this question just to Kelly, though, because I wanted to be respectful of the whole question answer process. But basically, in some communities, especially in some communities of color that are quote unquote unorganized, the official way that we know them to be organized by precincts, they don't really recognize that structure. And so we keep going to the same communities over and over again, trying to bring a structure to that community saying, this is the way it needs to be. And the community is organized, perhaps, but in a different way that maybe we're not accustomed to, because we're looking at traditional political democratic organizational strategy around precincts. So one way is to really start to look at who has the power within the community. Who are the de facto leaders? Who are the ones that everyone looks up to? Who are the big mamas? Who are the uncles? Who are the aunties in the community? Who everyone looks up to and says, this is who we trust. This person has a key to my house. They're not my relative, but they have a key to my house, or they know what's going on with my neighbors, my family, And they're the ones who establish kind of the trust within the community. When we as NNCP go into those communities and we help to build power within those people who are identified as those leaders, then we're able to get people organized. We're able to see power being built from the leader who already lives there. And again, it's not going to be in that same precinct structure, which we're accustomed to. So we've got to become more comfortable with being uncomfortable with power structures that are organized differently than what we're accustomed to.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Steele and Senator Batch. I'm going to hand it back to Becca now.
Thank you, Patience. And again, Dr. Steele, Senator Batch, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for everything that you do to lead us toward a better North Carolina day in and day out. And we know you're really busy, so we really appreciate you finding time to come talk to us. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think you have energized us and given us hope, plus a little tinge of fear, I have to say too, but that gives me energy. That gives me focus and drive. And you've given us hope and are helping to shine a light on a path forward, which sounds corny, but I really mean that you need to feel like there's some way to do this thing. And thank you for being, I'm very moved and touched by it all. Thank you so much for coming.
Susan, I will just say Republicans win because of fear. So if it takes a little fear to put fire in all of our bellies, then this is the time that we need to be fearful. But I just want to say for all of the volunteers that are on the call that might be new to Neighbors on Call and you've just found this organization, I would not be where I am politically without Neighbors on Call and the support that they have made. They are a phenomenal group of individuals. And frankly, when I went to the Senate, because they've traditionally only worked with House candidates, I was really sad because I was like, I'm not going to be able to work with my favorite people. And then you guys were gracious enough to continue to follow me into the Senate race. But again, you all are amongst some of the most brilliant minds who have a much better sense of how to canvass and how to connect with voters than frankly the state party. And I talk about their model all the time. And I just want to thank every single person who give all of your time and treasures, which you were all busy to being able to stay in the good fight with us, with Dr. Steele and with myself, to make this a more perfect union that we all want to have. So thank you guys for everything that you do and continuing to put up with the craziness that happens to be my districts.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. Good night, be well, and we will see you very soon.
And watch on our website. We'll post the recording of this event. It takes a little turnaround time to get it ready, but it should be within 24 hours. It'll be on our website under resources. So tell your friends, or if you missed something about Amy's wonderful slides, you can go back and you can actually pause it and read them carefully. So thanks so much to all of you. It's a wonderful group. Bye.
Good night.